I'm starting. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We're going to take 1 more minute to allow all the attendees to enter before we start. Hans, I think we can start. We have a good number of attendees joining. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Dear speakers, dear moderator, dear attendees. My name is Alessandra Casano. I'm the Knowledge Management Analyst for the Financing Facility for Remittances of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. Welcome everyone to this webinar to this eGFRID, organized by IFAD in partnership with the Pan-African Postal Union. Before giving the floor to the moderator, to Hans Boon, I would like to give you some housekeeping rules, just to remind you that interpretation, English and French, will be provided, and you will find a small globe at the bottom on the bar, on the control bar, and you can click you can select the channel that you would like to use, either French or English or floor if you wish to listen to both. The webinar will be recorded and available in both languages, English and French. And should you wish to ask questions during the Q&A session, you have 2 means to do that, either through the chat or through the Q&A sessions. We will manage to answer all your questions. However, if time does not allow, the remaining questions will be answered and available on the GFRID website at www.gfrid.org website. So without further ado, I would pass the floor to my colleague, Hans Boon, Senior Expert on Remittances and Postal Networks of the Financing Facility for Remittances at IFAD. Again, welcome everyone, and Hans, the floor is yours. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Alessandra, for this introduction, for opening the webinar. Welcome to all the participants, and would like to really warmly welcome everyone to this specific webinar, this e-Global Forum for Remittances, Investment and Development, which is specifically for the postal networks and remittances in Africa. And I would like to warmly welcome you because this seminar will address and look in the dimensions, the challenges, the perspectives of the postal networks, which are all across Africa, and their current and potential role in delivering remittances, especially in rural areas. And we will look at this in the context of digitalization, in the context of poverty, in the context of deeper financial inclusion. I'm very glad and very proud that this webinar can be conducted together with a panel of very prominent leaders and experts in the field of postal financial services and remittances. I will be happy to introduce each of them in more detail when we go to their specific contribution or presentation in the webinar, but just a quick round. I would like to mention, first of all, the Secretary General of the Pan-African Postal Union, Mr. Sifundo Chief Moyo. The other speaker is from Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, Mr. Isaac Gnambo Yao. He's the Director General of the La Poste du Côte d'Ivoire. I'm very happy that Andrew Kabira could join us. He's the Executive Director of Postbank Uganda. And I also very warmly welcome to Ersun Kutlu, Regional Director of Eurojaro, based in Copenhagen. And also from Copenhagen is joining us Mrs. Veronica Stutzgart, the chair of the International Association of Money Transfer Networks. And finally, but definitely not least, is Sergei Dulkersky, based in Bern at the UPU. He is the head of the Postal Financial Services and really in charge of the remittance operations, policy, and projects from the side of UPU. UPU stands for Universal Postal Union, another UN agency in which IFAD warmly collaborates to promote this project. And welcome, Sergei. Thank you. And after this brief introduction, I would like then to pass the floor actually to my good friend, Mr. Sifundo Chief Moyo. And to give a little bit of background, Mr. Chief Moyo is today based in Arusha, Tanzania. This is the headquarters of the Pan-African Postal Union, and he's very active there since, I think, 1.5 years. And our acquaintance, our knowledge of each other goes back actually more than 25 years, at the time when it was still Zimbabwe Post and Telecom operations. And I can gladly tell you that we saw together, and we not only saw, we worked together on the transformation of this Post and Telecom Corporation, a typical state monopoly, in the breakup of the Post and Telecom Corporation into a bank, into a postal operation, a telecom operation, and the modernization of both. And indeed, Mr. Chief Moyo has been, prior to joining the PAPU as Secretary General, he has been actually at the helm leading ZimPost in its diversification, working with many postal, not only postal operators, but especially also money transfer operators, financial institutions, helping to expand the access to digital services. So I would only say a very warm welcome, and I'm very happy to see Sifundo here to introduce the webinar, to open it officially. Thank you for your taking the floor, Sifundo. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Hans-Paul, for ceding the floor to me, and thank you very much for that illuminating introduction. Indeed, we have been in the postal trenches for over 25 years together. Greetings to all the esteemed speakers, discussants, distinguished delegates from PAPU member states, dear participants, and our valued partners. I'm honored to deliver the opening remarks at this webinar being co-hosted by PAPU and IFAD, whose theme is leveraging African postal networks in innovating rural access to remittances and financial services. The Pan-African Postal Union is a specialized agency of the African Union mandated with coordinating postal services development in Africa. Currently, it has 45 member countries, and the union's objectives are numerous, but I would want to single out one that is relevant to what we are talking about today, which is the promotion and facilitation of access to quality universal postal services, knowing quite well that the postal sector is an essential component of the digital economy and socio-economic inclusion, whose projects need prioritization in national development plans. PAPU has a number of goals, but one goal that I would want to refer to is on the encouragement of African governments to establish a postal sector that promotes financial inclusion, builds the capacities of designated operators for digital transformation in order to broaden their digital financial services suite. At this moment, I want to refer to very key Africa metrics. The first being that the postal network has 25,000 postal outlets and employs about 59,000 members of staff. And Africa's population is 1.4 billion, plus or minus 1.4 billion, which presents a huge market potential. And the population distribution is as follows. In North Africa, 48% of the population is in urban centers, 52% in rural areas. And in sub-Saharan Africa, 32% is in urban areas and 68% is in rural areas. This population distribution helps us to understand the importance of remittances to rural areas. And looking at 2021, sub-Saharan Africa received $49 billion from the diaspora as remittances. And again, this is a very important statistic. The postal sector in Africa has a very important role when it comes to financial services. It plays the role of pushing financial inclusion, which is providing access to useful and affordable financial products and services that meet individuals and businesses' needs. And financial inclusion has been identified as an enabler for 7 sustainable development goals and a key enabler to reduce extreme poverty and boost shared prosperity. And this has been done by the World Bank. The Post also adds value and creates value for its partners. As you know, the Post Office provides access to a variety of payment systems, be they cash, paper, card, online, or mobile payments. And the Post's biggest asset is the trust it commands and its unparalleled footprint in communities. And this trust is built on its reliability, affordability, and secure nature. And for partners that get into a relationship with the Post, you find that because of its wide postal network coverage, signing one contract is adequate for your services to be made available across the country. And post offices also have operational excellence and quality service delivery built on systems and processes and procedures that are uniform across the country, giving a standardized service delivery option. And the Post, because of this trust, is very accountable. It is audited by external auditors, and they produce reports to that effect. And most importantly, the Post is subject to compliance checks on consumer protection by regulatory authorities. So at this moment, I would want to touch a bit on the postal reforms on financial services in the postal network. The postal sector reforms and institutional reforms, including modernization to embrace digital transformation of the postal financial services, has given rise to the capabilities of providing digital services like digital money, digital remittances, digital wallets, digital card schemes, and digital customer services, including e-commerce payment facilitation, e-government payments, and pension payments and salary disbursements on behalf of the government. And through these reforms, managerial and organizational capacity for new digital environment and new services has to be created through the training of employees on products and services, and also strengthening the market planning to produce detailed business models and business plans. At the same time, the regulatory environment and the regulatory perspective need to be addressed, where regulatory frameworks have to be configured to cater for new digital and tech-based services. And most importantly, central banks' linkages with the postal regulators is essential, in that I have said the postal sector plays in the financial services space. And indeed, central banks need to be linked to the post office as financial services providers, so that they can in turn link the post offices with partners like the World Bank and Africa Development Bank. And while I'm still on that, I want to briefly talk about how development institutions and other partners could collaborate with the Post. The Post, is, from its definition, is a developmental institution that can be used to roll out government programs and partner with private institutions to provide services on behalf of these principles, like your microfinance services to the youths, to the women, and SMEs. And partnership opportunities with money transfer operators provide an opportunity for delivery of the rural leg of payments, cash in and cash out for agents, last mile delivery of cash. And the partners may also need to invest in terms of capacity building, software solutions, and providing seed capital. But what they stand to benefit is that getting into a partnership with the Post allows for lean management outcomes, where there is no need for a one-to-one contract situation, where if a partner has to sign with 200 agents, they will need to have 200 contracts. But if it's a post office with 200 post offices, you just need one contract. And most importantly, the informal sector, we know how risky it is and how costly it is. Partnering also has benefits that flow to the Post. I'll only mention three, which are the acquisition of new customers, accessing new technology, and improving the digital customer experience. And in Africa, we have had success stories where partnerships between the Post as providing physical and cash managing capabilities, and mobile service providers and fintech organizations has produced very commendable results. We have seen this in Benin, in Morocco, and in Tunisia. And we also have seen the linking of the Post to the national payments infrastructure for seamless sharing of financial data and interoperability, as has happened in Morocco and Al-Barid Bank. This is Morocco Post and Al-Barid Bank. And we have seen card-based services with partners happening in Egypt, South Africa, and Algeria. And we have seen own postal smart card in Namibia and Tunisia. And posts have also provided mobile financial services and mobile banking, like in Kenya and in Zimbabwe. And I'm sure today we are going to hear more about the e-Posta Pay solution that is in Uganda through a partnership with Eurogyro. And in conclusion,
Sifundo, maybe you could try to complete your presentation as we a little bit running out of the agenda to the time.
Yes, in conclusion, moderator, I'm on my last bit, just to speak briefly about the future of the post or remittances in the post, to say that development institutions need to augment their role and allow the post to play its part in poverty alleviation and facilitating international remittances through supporting them. Here I'm talking about your World Bank, IFAD, and ADB. And as we know that the post can lower the cost of sending remittances globally, it would also be important that they are supported, especially seeing that they play a very important part in terms of delivery of services to rural areas. Moderator, thank you so much. I cede the floor back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General of Pan-African Postal Union. I think an excellent speech, an excellent comprehensive overview of the current state and the opportunities and trends which are going on. Thank you. I would like to give the floor now to another colleague of mine, which we have been working, I think, Mr. Isaac Namboyao, the Director General of the La Poste du Côte d'Ivoire. And I think our first meeting was maybe 8 or 9 years ago in Abidjan, and from there many times. I see, I hope, Isaac, you're there, and I hope you can provide an introduction and highlights on the situation and from the perspective of Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you.
Merci. J'espère que vous m'entendez très bien.
Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me.
Merci beaucoup.
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to greet all the panelists, and I would also like to thank the Pan-African Postal Union, which is our union and that coordinates our policies, our postal policies in Africa, and it provides a lot of support to postal services. And I would like to say hello to my dear friend Sifundo Mayo, and I would also like to thank him for all the opportunities that are provided to us every time we need assistance and every time we have to focus on this very crucial question of the role that postal services can play in financial services. Let me recall the theme that seems very important to me, the topic that has justified my joining this initiative. We are talking about leveraging African postal networks in innovating rural access to remittances and financial services. Now, this is a very important issue indeed, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that in the last 5 to 10 years, this topic of financial inclusion is indeed it's a very topical issue. It is addressed in all forums and summits and meetings of heads of state and government at the UN level. When we talk about sustainable development, we always talk about developing financial services for as many people as possible and as many populations as possible on this planet. And in Côte d'Ivoire, the Postal Service is continuing to develop its services. Now, as far as financial services are concerned, through postal services in Côte d'Ivoire, there was a political decision that was taken to in the 1980s to 1990s to offer financial services in the 80s and the 90s. And this is important to note. In fact, I was trying to say the opposite, rather, that in the 1980s and 1990s, they lost the possibility of providing financial services, just like a lot of other African countries, because the idea was to separate postal services and financial services. But I think it should change, because I think that it is time to go into financial services, which is why there is this initiative that has been launched. I'm not going to give you too many statistics, but 20% of our adult population has access to international remittances, whereas over 45% of remittances are done within the country itself, and 70% of traffic is within African countries, and even more so within the West African sub-region. Now, so because the postal services lost financial services in Côte d'Ivoire, they try to focus on leveraging remittances with partners, partnerships with large services. But the problem here, as usual, is always the cost. The cost is always very high, which such international operators. So we're trying to work with operators internationally that are slightly more flexible and that provide alternatives. We try to use innovation, technology, and digital services as far as possible, which is not a problem in itself, but we need to adapt to this. We have to make sure that we have the right networks, and that we need to increase all sorts of possibilities to be able to work with international partners, and to make sure that international partners actually include Côte d'Ivoire as well. So a lot of initiatives have been taken. There are a lot of declarations as well at the national level, but I think everyone will agree on the fact that even if the postal services are not moving fast as quickly as we would like to, postal services still remain a key operator in financial education and digital education as well, because the postal services remains a very important link by way of physical presence, which is very important, because that is the link that provides financial education to our population. And partnerships will indeed enable us to have more flexibility, to be more nimble, and also to use technology, to use innovation, which is very important in the development of our different operators. In Côte d'Ivoire, we have certain traditional remittance solutions, but we also have solutions with prepaid banking cards that enable you to have a postal account on which you can put savings, and then there are other operations, bank transfers and payments for which this account can be used. Now, I'm not going to take too much time. I'm going to try to conclude. Just to let you know that we are looking for partners, for networks, for cash out for our populations. And especially for rural populations that are left behind. And they have needs. And so we want to make sure that the postal services can start what we call circular economy operations. We need to be capable of transferring money, remitting money, so that populations can also pay for their necessities, they can also save, etc. So we need to think about how postal services are not just a cash out point, but also a full-fledged player in the circular economy, in remittances, in payment of e-commerce services, and to make sure that our populations can receive money to pay for fertilizers, to pay for seeds, and be able to pay for their domestic needs. So these are real issues on which international players want postal services to be more flexible, and this is what the offering should be built on, because postal services are indeed the trusted third party. No, we're talking about local points, local networks. We're talking about services that provide cash management and also universal service universal public service, because of course profitability is also important. We need to justify that we are efficient, and this is how we will gather momentum. So I think that we have to make the link with all these factors that I mentioned, with proper regulation and proper governance. So this in a nutshell is what I wanted to tell you as far as our contribution is concerned, and I wanted to just give you a brief overview of what the Côte d'Ivoire Postal Services are doing in this ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Isaac. I think a very inspiring and insightful presentation about the situation and the vision from La Poste du Côte d'Ivoire. I think it's a very good benchmark and say for many of the other postal operators, but also for many of the potential partners to work with you. And thank you again. I would now like to give the floor to Andrew Kabira. He's the Executive Director of Postbank Uganda. And Andrew has joined Postbank about 1.5 years ago, I think. And prior to that, he was very active in the Ugandan banking sector, and prior to that, the private sector. So this is also a way in capacity building of state-owned organizations and bringing in the perspective and the experience of the private and financial sector. Andrew is the executive director and has a large responsibility for financial inclusion development and also the partnership with Posta. I would like to give the floor to Andrew, and just making one reference to the introduction of Isaac, saying how in Côte d'Ivoire the Postbank, or at that time the Caisse des Dépôts de Poste, or something like this, Caisse d'Épargne de Poste, was separated from La Poste, but completely separated. This has not happened in Uganda, where actually I was involved in that structure to continue a partnership. And the same is for Zimbabwe, where also the Postbank was separated from the Post, but in a managerial, legal, accounting perspective, not in the operations. They work together. And therefore, warmly welcome to Andrew, presenting the case of Uganda and the next steps in the development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hans, as the moderator, the chairman for the association, fellow discussants and speakers, the partners, and all the listeners all over the world. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to each of you. And I'm happy to be here. I would like to thank the moderator for that introduction. Yes, I'm new to Post Bank, and therefore to this kind of arrangement. I've been here for the last 2 years, and I'm really happy with the kind of work that is being done by Post Bank in conjunction with Post Office. To start with, I'm going to talk about the role in Uganda of Post Office. First of all, Post Offices are trusted simply because of the legacy they have within the country. They've been here for so many years. So people trust the post offices. So whatever is supplied and done from there, they feel that it is legitimate. With that, you find that whatever you channel through those post offices, it is easily adapted or consumed. Talking about that, we've partnered with Post Office to drive what we call agency banking. Agency banking is typically banking that is extended to the last mile of the village people, where you may not have banks, but you have a representative where you can withdraw some money, whether it is from abroad or from within the country, say from towns. And also, you can also deposit in case you have an account. So we have a partnership with Post Office where they distribute for us the agency banking model. So to that effect, because they already known, we use them to have visibility. I'm going to talk about the mantra that in the current banking, there is no need of having, presence, if you want to call it brick and mortar. However, given the kind of the environment we have within Africa, you find that the people who are in the villages still want to have physical attachment to what you call a bank, where they can go and complain, where they can go and have a discussion with a physical human being. So the penetration of, for example, smartphones is not so deep. Those who have phones, they use what you call feature phones. So being present in the villages, or what you call being with the last mile consumer, is still very critical within Africa, and particularly in Uganda. So to that effect, we've been working to deploy what you call the postal app. Hope Ugandans will receive from friends and relatives from Europe, and for now within the Scandinavian particularly. When you talk about the money that the country receives from abroad, it's around $1.4 billion generally across the world into Uganda. And really that forms a huge part of the Ugandan GDP. So it is an area that we cannot ignore, because helping people to get financially included. How? When they receive this money from friends and relatives, and they are able to go to the post office or post bank agent, they are able to receive this money. They go to the garden and they are able to plow their land and have a livelihood. Over time, some of them are able to scale and they are no longer living on handouts, but others keep receiving these handouts. So with that, I think it's a very fantastic model where you have an app, you're in Sweden or you're in Denmark, you pull money maybe off your Visa, you use your Visa card, you pull from your bank account, you put on this wallet, then you directly send to the bank within Post Bank, account within Post Bank, or just tell the beneficiary to go to a post office or post bank agent or post bank branch to go and withdraw that money by just presenting some details. So to me, that's a good way of mixing digitization, but also with physical presence to drive financial inclusion. I know I do not have so many minutes, but I also like to talk about the kind of impact this has had, more so within the the pandemic, talking about COVID. Even recently, we may not be aware, we got another pandemic, it's called Ebola. So Uganda, some districts were closed. And indeed, people who were closed, you can imagine they couldn't move, but if they have access to their postal office or agents within those districts, then they are able to receive some money. So having this kind of infrastructure and you add, digitization, I think to me is the best way you can talk about, financial inclusion in a physical and also digital way. So I think to me, that's it. That's what I want to talk about for the case of Uganda in these minutes. Thank you so much, Hans, and I'm really, really happy to be working with you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew. It's a very good presentation, a very good overview of what happens in Uganda and the view of Postbank on the partnership with Posta and financial inclusion. Very relevant, and thank you very much. And again, I'm personally very happy to see this project going forward together in deepening and bringing it more to the population. And that brings us to the next speaker, Mr. Ersun Kutlu. Ersun Kutlu is the regional director of Eurogiro. This is a global postal payments network, I think founded 30 years ago, and with many members across the world, and has now recently established a partnership with Uganda. And I think that's where Ersun can introduce a bit more on what is happening there, but also how it fits in the global context of Eurogiro and what would be the vision to go forward. Thank you. Ersun, the floor is to you, and please inspire us with your views. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hans. Hello to all participants, and thank you for IFAD and Pan-African Postal Union as organizations to set up such a forum and a discussion panel. So Eurogiro's history goes back to 1993, when it's been founded by 14 European postal operators to establish an electronic cross-border payment system and infrastructure. So you can consider this as a SWIFT-like structure where you can easily send money electronically from one post office to another. Over the years, of course, the network has grown, and now we have around approximately 50 members all around the world. It can be postal operators directly, or post banks, or some other financial that go and build a Eurogiro network and community together for cross-border financial services. And Eurogiro, actually, it's acquired by Inpay, which is a fintech company in Denmark, financial technology company in Denmark, having its own license in Europe, passported to all European countries under the Payment Service Directive of Europe. And when this acquisition has been done, we set a strategy for the future, an inclusive strategy for the postal operators, how we can empower them, empower postal operators all around the world to offer meaningful and profitable and also inclusive financial services all over the world. So we came with the idea, first of all, with the idea of an application, a web platform, which is called Financial Supermarket, which actually creates an ecosystem of financial service providers and linking these financial service providers to each and every post office around the world through a single connection, a single platform, single settlement, single contract. And now we have several money transfer operators who are connected to the system, and it's a plug and play system that any postal operator all around the world can benefit from, either to exchange and send transaction in an instant way between each other in minutes, 24/7, or benefit from different financial service providers who are already connected in the system. And after building such a platform and starting with Bulgaria as our first map 19, now we expanded our coverage to 16 countries in the world. We started with Bulgaria, now Turkey, and one of the countries that we have activated last year was Uganda. And we started with Posta Uganda first to enable Posta Uganda by using their financial service license that they acquired from the Central Bank of Uganda to offer different money transfer operator products and services, cash payout, in a single access, the hassle of going to connect to several different service providers that they have their own standards, of course, and that adds more complexity. Then actually this year, we also activated our mobile app, which is called Postal Pay mobile app, which enables the post offices and postal organizations to acquire customers from European countries for remittances. So by using this Postal Pay mobile app, we as InPay, acting like a licensed service provider in Europe, can enable all the post offices around the world to collect instant remittances, whether for cash payout or in relevant cases directly to the accounts, postal accounts or post bank accounts, like we do in Uganda, in a very efficient and easy way. So it's a common brand, Postal Pay, which reminds and which tells us this is a postal product at the end of the day. This is a postal payment product. And by using this product, every single person in Europe can register and use his card, whether it's prepaid, debit, or credit, to instantly send money to any postal operator which uses our financial supermarket platform for cash payouts. And also we connect to the post offices who have their own account base, or with the post banks who offer the accounts to beneficiaries. And we are pretty excited about that. This is going to be our first pilot project in Uganda. This one, direct payouts, instant payouts to the accounts, and supported by this project is, of course, definitely supported by IFAD and EU. So my main takeaways from the project, actually, let me tell you that now we are piloting the project. We have built the product. We are in a pilot stage where with selected senders about 120 senders, identified senders from both countries, Sweden and Netherlands. We are going to pilot the product and fix any issues that may happen during the pilots. And we are aiming for a full launch and marketing efforts to start in January next year. So my main takeaways from this project, actually a couple of takeaways I can tell you. First of all, I think the local regulatory frameworks and government authorities really should address postal networks as a special class of financial service provider if we are really seriously talking about a financial inclusion. So we are talking really a network, a broad network with trust, with so much expertise that can reach out to the rural areas and make this financial inclusion in selected markets really happen. And the second thing is that I think that if a postal network or a postal organization doesn't have a kind of bank license or a similar license to offer complementary financial services like accounts, like cards, or insurance or whatever, a strong strategic partnership with a local bank, and if there is a post bank, of course, in the country, it's an apparent case. It's a key success for an impactful financial inclusion in rural areas, because as Isaac also mentioned, the post office as a network shouldn't really be an agent for cash payout. So the cash payout is only one step in the financial inclusion. And we have to offer the customers, the beneficiary, additional products, additional capabilities, payment points, cards, mobile wallets, to really make this financial inclusion happen in the postal ecosystem. Of course, the main points that I'd like to highlight: staff training, the ICT infrastructure, staff motivation in the branches, cash liquidity management, and marketing know-how are key components for postal networks that continuously should be developed, and with the help of partners like Eurogiro or with other partners. And this initiative, this project, really in the short-term future needs to look at not only a payout or receive side of the story, but also how to empower postal networks to also improve cash in or money in products like government payments, e-commerce payments, and as mentioned by Andrew, how we enable them to become more successful in agency banking services as well in Uganda and in other countries as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ersun. And thank you. Very interesting, again, very interesting presentation, and very happy to hear, I think, a number of principles in your story, and especially in the takeaways. One of the principles which I really like is that you, with the pilot testing, you aim at operational excellence. This is, you could say, a must for postal financial services. You are not, as a post office, able to offer a wide range of services. You're not able to negotiate with each and every client. How would you like? Would you like a little bit more of this? Would you like to have this taste or this color? No, there's just one standard product per type of product. But the main point is it's always right. It always works. Wherever,
yes.
Whichever post office, whenever channel, whatever the time, it works. That's how you build trust, how you build confidence. And that's a very to the things you mentioned. Yes, as a post, you need to be a financial supermarket. I think you make a contribution with the Eurojaro solution and giving more MTOs, more money transfer remittances at the post office, but it also needs to go deeper. It's not only about the cash out, you need more. And that's, well, you're not a bank. So that's where sometimes the build-up of a partnership between the post office and a bank, even if that has the name Postbank, is a continuous challenge. How to do that, how to make both parties happy and equally happy. That is, I think, some of the very important highlights from your presentation, which I appreciate very much. And meanwhile, we see that also questions are coming in to the public, to the audience. Thank you. Please, we don't have a very open discussion at this moment, but please, if you have questions, requests, please submit them via the chat box, and we will continue trying to answer them after the presentations. But that's where I feel with our next speaker, and if I look at my own principles, I should have started with Mrs. Veronica Stutzgart. Ladies first is the principle, but you're not here as the first speaker now. But I would like to highlight Veronica Stutzgart. Is the chair and also the founder of the International Association of Money Transfer Networks. I think it's nearly 20 years ago that organization was founded and has grown from an association with several members to really a worldwide network from very different types of money transfer operators, small ones, very digital, very mobile, to the very huge ones. And in a very important representation of the money transfer industry. Veronica has been very active in this, but prior to this also been really a practitioner in remittances, money transfers, and banking, and in different parts of the world. And therefore, warm welcome to Veronica to this webinar. And as you have over this 20 years, more than I guess, quite a lot of experience in meeting postal operators from the money transfer perspective, or have heard from money transfer network operators how they try or how they didn't succeed or succeeded in building, working with postal networks. I've always appreciated that in the global summits, which are IAMTM, the postal network, the postal industry, is a welcome participant to talk and to meet with money transfer operators. So please, Veronica, please take the floor and tell us what, from the private sector perspective, and especially from the money transfer industry, the view is on the postal networks in Africa and the potential and what you think can be done better, different, or etc.
Thank you very much, Hans. Thank you very much for the kind presentation. I would like to say thank you for IFAD for organizing this and inviting IMTN to participate. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. One of the things that being after the speaker after these experts is that most of the things that I was planning to discuss or to mention here have already been discussed. So I would like to change a bit and I would like to start with the questions. I would like to start, and the question would be, how can we leverage postal networks in a way that respond to today's customers' demand? Speaking from the remittance services providers, I think that would be what I would like to highlight here as well. As Mr. Sifundo Chief Moyo highlighted when started his presentation, most post office, due to the extended network they have, can serve as a key way to deliver remittances, especially in rural area. If I'm not wrong, he mentioned around 25,000 post offices around Africa. So that shows us the importance of the potential the post office network have when we talk about remittances, when we talk about financial inclusion and inclusivity into the financial system. Also, another thing I wanted to mention is it is not surprising, as Ron mentioned, around 70% of the post offices in the last mile in developing countries are turning into what he mentioned, these remittance supermarkets. That's not surprising when we see that nowadays post office normally deliver more money than mail. But in order for the remittance services providers to partner with the post offices, what we would like is to have sustainable partnerships. And for this, one of the key things is we need to consider customer expectations. These customer expectations have never been higher than today. So it is important to keep it in mind when working on these partnerships. For remittance services provider, failing to meet this customer expectation can have serious impacts in their businesses. If we think on average, 1/3 of customers will be switching provider after having only one bad experience. So when considering partnering with post offices, we need to build sustainable partnerships. There are many successful stories. And as it was highlighted already, it was Benin, Morocco, Tunisia, Cote d'Ivoire. There are many in Africa that we can but another reality is there are some cases where remittance services providers have finalized, have signed agreements with post office, but had not been implemented. And that is something that we have probably to work on. We would like to see that when there are agreements signed, they are implemented. So within the private sector, the remittance services provider, we've been trying to understand what are the challenges they're facing? Why are these agreements not always being implemented? And there are a few challenges. Most of the challenges have already been mentioned. As we mentioned, a few. We know very well post offices are underfunded in some cases. Their front office operations, lack of customer focus, quality customer focus. In some cases, we see weak supporting in helping financially illiterate customers. We saw some issues with cash management, weak or late reporting. Connectivity is another common issue. And we see a problem sometimes in governance. This is because there are frequent changes, and the reason could be because key management is appointed in some cases for political reasons instead of professional capability, and to instability and sometimes bad management. Exclusivity is another issue that we see. Even though it's forbidden, exclusivity contract, but in some cases it can still happen. But there are successful stories. I mean, these are a few of the things that we have to work on in order to change. We must consider these important challenges when working together for a more inclusive, transparent, safer, and cheaper cross-border remittance industry. Remittance services provider can benefit by working with the postal networks. Postal offices have large and good networks. They are present in the deepest areas of the countries. They are in villages, in cities, or remote rural areas where no banks are. So we have to consider that. Remittance services providers can use this network to expand the delivery method. Customer post office, they use for many services, especially the customers that trust the post offices, and especially the banks. They trust more the post offices than the bank. It's a public service. Then pricing is something that can also be an advantage, and it can help us to work together in reducing the cost of remittances. As mentioned before, around 70% of the post office in the last mile are turning into these remittance supermarkets. In these post offices, customers can access remittances from different remittance services providers, money sent cashless via digital applications, cards, or bank accounts, or even wallets. This approach not only promotes competitive growth, but also allows the customer to compare the prices of remittances and maybe guide the sender of the remittance in choosing a different option. So it can also support the receiver of the remittances, more business revenue for the postal operators, especially for the rural post offices, where, as we said before, the traditional letter mail is becoming extinct. And the other thing is, we know on average, only 5 to 7% of all the payments transactions in Africa are made via electronic or digital channels. So, of course, post offices have a huge potential there. Cash coverage is still fundamental, and post offices can help with that. Delivering remittances can be part of the post strategy to contribute to achieve the SDGs, as it is not only enhancing financial inclusion, what they can do, but also to help to reduce the cost of remittances. As we know, the World Bank clearly states that in the second quarter of 2022, to send $200 to low medium-income countries was around 6%, which is not much different if we consider from 2021, and is still half of what we are supposed to achieve with the SDG target 10C. So post offices have the potential to contribute to this. But in order to leverage the postal network, we need to work together. We need to solve the challenges we are facing within partnerships. And we also need to, I will agree with Erson, we need appropriate governance. We need risk management practice. They must be implemented in for the post office. I know some of them have them, but we need to work more. And for this, we need the regulators to play an important role. They have an important role to play here. So we need the regulators to get involved. We need, and another thing I would like to ask, probably to have for, this is probably more for IFAD, is we need data. We need accurate data on remittances that go through the post offices. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Veronica. I think a very good presentation, very comprehensively explaining and very warmly explaining the interest of the money transfer industry really to work together with the postal industry. But as you mentioned, and that's I think in every partnership, there are good aspects and there are things that could be better. I think it's very good to know the intention and the motivation from your side that to work together and to intensify the collaboration, and you see the opportunities in intensification in this. So it's therefore, I think, a very good moment to switch to our next speaker, Sergei Dulkelsky, who you could say is the representative of the other side of the partnership, from the postal side, from the Universal Postal Union, as one of the policymakers, one of those who provide technical assistance and guidance to postal operators in improving partnerships. Thank you again. And I would like to say, to keep as key messages word, especially customer centricity. This customer focus is a key issue for postal operators. The days of monopoly are gone. The days of a state service are gone. It is in a competitive climate, and above all, customer is king. That needs to be the principle of the approach. The aspects of governance, regulatory environment, professional management, cash management, risk management, these are very important aspects to take into account, I think, in making the plan for further improving, strengthening the partnerships, and building a stronger basis for leveraging the postal networks in delivering remittances and from delivering remittances to financial inclusion. So, having heard all this and having heard all the first presentations, I think the floor is to Sergei. Sergei Dulkelsky has started, I think, has been working prior to joining the UPU, the Universal Postal Union, several years ago, I think in 2016 or something like this. He was mainly involved in Post Europe, the Association of Postal Operators based in Brussels, and prior to that at the Russian Post. He has a background in many types of postal operations, in international postal operations, and in especially the last 5 to 6 years in financial services. And looking at, that's what I think is the most interesting part of what he's working on, is a new vision. What is the vision of UPU to indeed tackle the challenges and the issues as mentioned also by Veronica. So Sergei, please take the floor, and welcome to hear your voice and your views on UPU's role in leveraging the African postal networks in delivering remittances. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans, and thank you, IFAD and PAPU, for inviting UPU for this event. I think, well, just to add, Hans, to what you said, recently from this year, I'm also responsible for sustainability. So I hope that in the future, in the coming years, I will be able to manage a link between the sustainable financial services, remittances, and climate change as well. So as for my presentation itself, recently UPU have conducted 2 studies, and I would like to share some of preliminary results from both. One is Global Panorama, which is not published yet, and another one is study on the Postal Financial Services Vision 2030. So if you look at the map, you can see that the world is blue, and it means that postal financial services are provided almost everywhere. We have some exceptions in the Nordic countries and North America. And of course, when I say provides, I want to clarify and specify that actually it's the access to the service. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the post provided by itself. It's usually done in partnership with somebody else. Going a bit deeper, you can see that 4 out of 5 post offices, they provide at least one type of financial services. We collected results from 134 countries, and 84% of them said that they do provide the service. We have 100% coverage in Eastern Europe and Northern Asia. In Africa is also close to 100%. It's 97%. If I remember correctly, only one country mentioned that they do not provide any type of financial services in the post office. We also observed that in a number of countries around the world, posts have more branches to serve their clients than commercial banks. To be more specific, from the data we gathered, 44 post offices, it's around 33%. They have more permanent branches than commercial bank networks in their respective countries. But when it comes to the African region, only 5 countries have a larger footprint than banks, so not that much. It's also interesting to mention that 80% of offices are in rural area. In Africa, this figure is a bit lower. It's 56% of all post offices in Africa and rural area. Of course, well, it still speaks about the advantage which posts have in providing the financial services in rural areas and for the underserved communities. Moving forward, I don't want to stay too long on that slide, but again, from the statistics we gathered, we see that the number of postal accounts grew by 20% and reached almost 2.4 billion. We think that this figure is larger if we collect information from each and every country. We also observed that in Africa, only 52 million out of 2.4 billion postal accounts are present in Africa. So this figure is really, really low. African Post, they prioritize remittance and G2P payments. And we touched this topic already today. I think Sun mentioned this and Veronica as well, that focus is mainly on cash in, cash out. So 75% of posts, they are offering such financial services on behalf of their partner. It's Western Union, MoneyGram, and any other MTOs we can see. We don't have accounts in North American and Latin American region, but that's more to the regulatory restrictions. When it comes to the revenue from financial services, you can see on the diagram on the right side, is that the average revenue is 20%. That's global wise. Looking at Africa, the percentage is a bit higher. It's about 1/3 of total revenue comes from the provision of financial services. When we conducted the study on future vision of postal financial services 2030, this study actually confirmed that postal operators, the designated operators, they're really in a position to benefit from all those opportunities which are arising from the market, from the regulatory trends, from the technological and policy trends in the area of financial services. Again, it was mentioned today a couple of times, Post could really play a strategic role in the provision of financial inclusion through either partnerships with other players on the market or as a governmental service provider. And COVID proved that, because they were really Post, were really recognized as trusted essential service providers. But on the other hand, and that was confirmed by the study as well, the COVID crisis itself, it showed that most of the institutions, most of the postal institutions, they have to really accelerate their digital transformation. And it should be done either by themselves, which sometimes is difficult due to the lack of finance, or in a partnership with other fintechs. Because at the end, the digital-only way of payments will become the new norm in financial services pretty soon. So that's no doubt. But somehow, posts are not that yet ready for such transformation, and they are really still too brick and mortar centered. So they need a help, and UPU can play a role here. On this slide, you can see, oh, sorry, I went too far. On this slide, you can see those recommendations coming up from the study. I don't want to stop and spend too much time on this. We can take it sideways and discuss afterwards, but just to mention what they need to focus on is, first is the design of the UPU financial services platform. And when I mean platform, it's about both. It's about the new services and about connecting of new partners to this platform. So that's what UPU has to focus and consider. Of course, to do so, there is a big need to secure adequate internal and extra budgetary funding. And that could be done either through partnership with different organizations and foundations, or through the voluntary funding from the member countries. There is need to enhance and really examine the UPU stakeholder value proposition. What actually UPU can bring value, where, how, and to whom. And of course, there is a big need to define the new external partnership engagement models, so that UPU is not doing, well, UPU and posts, when I'm saying UPU is mainly I mean posts, how they engage in their partnerships, whom they talk to, who are reliable partners. That's for sure the role of the UPU. And my second part and last part is more about the financial inclusion. I would like to say a few words about the FITAF program. And this FITAF program was designed together with the UPU and Visa and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It is focused on the deployment of 20 individual FITAF projects with 20 different designated operators. And the goal of this project is to advance the postal digital financial services in order to achieve the goals of financial inclusion. There were two different types of projects. One, the development of the digital financial services strategy, and the second one was a technical assistance. Out of 20 projects, 9, almost half, went to African countries. So 3 for the strategies, namely Togo, Ivory Coast, and Rwanda, if I'm not mistaken, and 6 TA. And well, you can see it on this slide, but mainly TA was focused either on the development of a debit and prepaid card service solutions, for example, in Benin and Burkina Faso, or on a mobile payment and wallet solutions like in Morocco or in Tunisia. The same was in Tanzania, so Post and that's quite a recent project. Post introduced the initiative to develop e-wallet, which will serve as their financial application. We also plan to launch one more, potentially with Botswana, but there are still discussions ongoing. It's more focused on the creation of the bank, of the postal bank. So we'll see whether we can go further with that or not. I think that's all, Hans. I can talk a bit more if I still have time, or if not, I'm happy to stop here and go for a Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Sergey. This was a very, information-rich and very valuable presentation on the views, the very good revelation of what is going on at UPU on resetting, reviewing its strategy, and on what has been practically done to support African postal operators in enhancing and advancing financial inclusion. Thank you. I agree that you could talk longer. I mean, it's not about 1 minute. I think with all of the speakers, we probably could talk with each at least 1 hour, maybe 1 day longer, because this is a subject that still needs a lot of elaboration, a lot of fine tuning, and I think a lot of working together to make it really happen. And it's also not just talking and presenting, but especially go on the ground, on site, 2 feet in the mud, in the field, and get it done. That's where I think part of our responsibility is to help the postal operators really advancing in financial inclusion. So thank you very much for sharing this view. And as we see, more is on the way. As you said, it's a strategy view in development. So it's good to stay in touch on, I think it's also very good for the participants who are today joining us, and many of them, to know that it would be good to raise their voice at some point when possible to UPU, or with their views or their inputs or their thoughts about the vision.
Hans,
I think it's something for everybody.
Yeah, Hans, if I may intervene here, you're absolutely to the point, and I would like to invite all those attending this webinar to join us on the 8th of December. Well, if you have not received the link yet, the invitation yet, please contact me directly. I will forward it to you. When we'll have the first meeting of the task force on the future of the postal financial services at the UPU. So 8th of December, either connect me or join us online that day.
Thank you, Sergey. I think that's positive, good news in terms that this is not a single standalone event, but that we go on, and that 8 December, that's actually very, very soon, next week. There is another event on another meeting to deepen the views on financial inclusion, and where African postal operating, also especially I think the Pan-African Postal Union can contribute with its views and its inputs. Thank you. Thank you. We have for today made a round with very impressive, prominent speakers looking at the same issue from different perspectives. And that's where I think we are now not at the end of this speech, because this webinar, because we have time available for additional comments, questions and answers. Before going into the questions and answers, I would like to give back the floor to our friend Isaac Gnambayao of La Poste du Côte d'Ivoire for making an additional statement. Please, Isaac, go ahead. S'il vous plaît, Monsieur Isaac, pour un
Merci, Hans, de me donner la parole. Je pense que...
Thank you, Hans, for giving me the floor again. I think that this is an excellent opportunity that you have provided us with today, because this session has been extremely mutually enriching. We have heard from others what has worked, what could work better, what needs to be improved upon. So we really have a snapshot of the ecosystem of remittances and the different postal operators and the role that they can play. I would like to point out, and I'm sure that Sifundo Chief Moyo will agree, that postal operators are faced with a situation which needs to be emphasized. They have a mission and they have an obligation to provide public service, which is why they're present in rural, isolated areas. So they have a mission. Of course, they have a mission to make sure that these networks are also profitable. because from a business standpoint, these areas are not necessarily profitable. But we've all spoken about how difficult it is to offer public these financial services up until the last kilometer or last mile. So I think here is a good opportunity to make sure that postal services can indeed make their networks profitable with all these financial services that can be created. And UPU should work on win-win solutions, win-win partnerships, where postal services, of course, will provide the service to the last mile, but will also be able to make these networks profitable, because we are located in areas where there isn't much traffic, because we have to work with whatever traditional postal services and resources that we have. And that is why we should work on the circular economy, in which we should include other value-added services, so that the full range of services can be improved. So I think this is something that I wanted to share. It is a bit thought-provoking, and I think that it was important to say this because we're always being asked to innovate, and we're working on blockchain-based solutions. We are working on crypto payments, etc., etc. All this is very well, but of course, the main issue is the profitability of our networks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Very good, Isaac. We like indeed thought-provoking comments, because that's what we need. We need provocation to refine, to specify the thoughts and the concepts. And I'm glad that also Sifundo raised actually his hand to make another statement, I think in response of you and of Sergey and Veronica's presentation. Please, Sifundo, Mr. Secretary General, please, could you take the floor?
Thank you very much, moderator. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for ceding the floor to me. I wouldn't want to duplicate what Isaac has said. I fully agree with him. And I just want to say that the postal model that we have been running with is a three-dimensional model where we are looking at three pillars: the physical, financial, and electronic pillars. But our observations are that most of the designated operators in Africa are not coming out strong on the financial pillar, financial services pillar. They do not see it as a key pillar that can actually help them in terms of revenue generation and contribution to profitability. And Veronica even pointed out that most post offices are just looking at remittance services. And we are still to find out whether it's an issue of licensing, which is limiting them. It may be giving rise to our suggestion to have a special class of financial service license, which will allow some accounts to be provided for in the post office, not the kind of licenses that are given to commercial banks. So I just wanted to emphasize the need for our designated operators to give full attention to the financial services pillar, so that they offer services beyond just the remittances, because there is a lot that they can offer which can contribute to their profitability. Thank you. I cede the floor back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. I think it's a very valuable and right statement that you make. Indeed, post offices make more money by delivering more money. That is, I think, an important principle. And as you say, if we talk about the three pillars, then indeed, for African postal operators, the pillar of financial services is today the key pillar, actually, from an economic perspective, to achieve sustainability. And that requires to understand what is profitability and what is outreach, also requires, say, proper financial management, being able to analyze the revenues, the cost, the profitability. And that is not so easy as it looks like, because it means cost allocation, transfer pricing, and actually quite an advanced and complex model of accounting. And that's maybe one of the issues to be addressed in further developing and strengthening the postal operators in really achieving business, but also achieving support to the sustainable development goals. Having said that, I would like to go to the questions which have been raised by the audience. And actually one question which I could actually give back to you, Sifundo, and also to Isaac, to other participants. It's actually a question for all participants, but the question is a very interesting, intriguing one. And it says, one of the most important activities in the remittance market is strategic marketing, is outreach at both sides of the corridors, which is about the sending countries and the receiving countries. The question is, how can postal operators improve their promotion of their remittance services, or we would say, or networks, both abroad among diaspora communities and inside the country, and especially in rural areas? I think this is really a key issue in making the business successful. Marketing, communication, advertising, promotions. And it is a particularly intriguing question, because if you look at the history of postal services or post offices, then the history is about communication. But now the challenge is, how as a post office do you communicate to your market, to your customer at both sides of the world? And that's a question maybe Sifundo or Isaac, maybe you'd like to comment and to share some views or experiences in this. Thank you. Sifundo?
Okay, thank you very much, moderator, for that question. It is a very important question. What I would like to say is that when you have remittances moving from one country to another, these do not just happen without agreement. There is an agreement between two designated operators for two countries. So I will just use that example to say, if there is a bilateral agreement, it should give recognition for the need to do marketing activities. And these marketing activities can work well if they are done in duality, where we are saying the parties agree to say, during this period, we are going to go and make noise in the market, so that when there is a coincidence in the two countries on the marketing side of things, then that message can get both to the sender and to the receiver, or potential sender and prospective receiver. And again, the other observation is mostly when we have people in the diaspora, they normally operate together as fellow countrymen, fellow countrywomen, and we should take advantage of those kind of gatherings or groupings to communicate our services that are available. And again, we have the benefit of your social network, social communication, where you have groups, whether they are WhatsApp groups, and these messages can be put there. But let's not forget, we are living in an era where technology is available. The websites can be taken advantage of, and operators can put sponsored adverts, whether it's on Google, on Facebook, and all these other current platforms that are patronized by people. So I think that can be done.
Sure, thank you. I think it's you highlight many of the aspects which can be done. I think one important aspect, and I would look also, and but also to you, is that many of these remittance services are done in partnership. So if we talk about marketing, advertising, promotion, it is a part of that partnership. And that's what we see. You see everywhere advertisements, promotions, signage, billboards, posters, affiches, leaflets. You see everything on the internet of the money transfer operators. So the question is, in building partnerships with them, is yes, the money transfer operator with fine service, but since we are your partner, can you also tell them that they can go to every post office to pick up or to send the money? And that's, I think, an important element in building effective partnerships. And maybe Veronica, you would like to add or to comment on this?
Yes, thank you. One short comment. That is why I was mentioning before, when doing a partnership, look for a sustainable partnership. These are things that might not be in the first agreement that you have an agreement, a processing transaction for X and Y remittance service providers, as the post office signed agreement, but not always it will detail marketing, or it just mentioned marketing briefly. But if you have a sustainable, a good relationship with your partners, these are the things that you can work and plan together with your partner. And I would suggest that, for example, know your partner. That's one of the key things. Know your partner, know when is your partner going to, or wants to do a promotion from his side in your region, and connect with him. Having that, nowadays we talk so much about technology, and I think the problem is not always technology. Technology is there. The problem is cooperation. And that's one of the things that we need to put together when we want to do this, is cooperation. We have to start working together, cooperating. We need to do it together, and we will have the results that we need. And yes, it is, I've been working in marketing campaigns where from the sender and the receiving side, it works both together, and both partners can increase the growth, the flows of their businesses. So that's all what I wanted to add.
Thank you. It's very good view and very good statement. Thank you. It's indeed know your partner. And that is, I think, a message indeed of working together very practically as partners. But it is also a message, I think, you could say, from a regulator or central bank perspective and from risk management. Both parties need indeed to undertake, before entering in the partnership, who are you? Who really are you? There are, and I think you can confirm from the money transfer industry, there are very decent, very reputable money transfer organizations, but there are also somewhere, maybe not even regulated, and trying to sell their services and approaching post offices with beautiful, wonderful stories. And the post office has no experience and no capacity in doing what we call customer due diligence. What is the risk? Who is this partner? What is the financial statement? What is the reliability? And that's something I think where from both sides, but especially also from, for instance, PAPU or UPU, guidance could be provided in how do you actually assess, how do you know, or what should you know about the money transfer operator with who proposes a contract, or if it is an aggregator, who is this aggregator or who is this bank? And on the other hand, post offices, designated operators need to be ready to have their documentation on hand. If you ask them, as say from the other side, as a money transfer operator, as a bank, I would like to see your financial statements. And if you're not profitable, how are your losses covered? How is your financial liquidity position? And if those answers cannot be answered, questions cannot be answered, then it doesn't help a lot in building that partnership. And that's something I would recommend both sides to look at in know your partner and keep knowing your partner from day to day. Once you've signed it, it's not a signature and then everything goes automatically. That's also very important indeed. It's based on technology, but requires constant collaboration. Thank you again, Veronica, for these statements. And we have not much time left. We have a few more questions. So we can switch to a very simple looking question. And the question is then, I see specifically for Eurogero. The question is, I think it would be an interesting point, not only from the Eurogero perspective, but the question is actually, do we have today or in the near future a post office to post office transfer remittances operation supported or operated or coordinated by Eurogero? Could you try to have a quick, clear answer on this?
Definitely.
Hello?
I think we lost him.
Oh, that's a pity. Hello?
Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah, okay. Welcome back.
Sorry for the technical trouble here. Just quickly answering your question. Yes, is that the service name is Postal Pay. So whether it's digital in or cash out, the service name that we are trying to build in the postal community is just Postal Pay. Eurogero is the company behind the service, and yes, we are actually starting having an instant money transfer service cross-country, cross-border within Africa with our current members, Ivory Coast, Togo, Algeria, Tunisia, Uganda. So this is going to be a learning phase for us for a cash in, cash out business, also included with the accounts business as well. And we expect, and we are in the pipeline, several other countries that are willing to join next year. So we're going to offer the basic service in a cheaper way, in as instant as possible and as convenient as possible between our partners. and we'll definitely share the learnings with all the other postal networks, hopefully very soon.
Thank you for this, I think, very valuable message. I think also very important SDGs and reducing the cost of sending money. The cost of sending money is high, but not so crazy high if you send it from far from Africa. But the cost is much higher than if you, for instance, look at your project in Uganda. If you send money from Rwanda or Tanzania to Uganda via commercial banks, prices go from 10% to 20%. So if you can break that, if you can disrupt that practice, and if you means the poster with partners as Eurogiro, I think this would be magnificent. Great, thank you. Then we are nearly at the end of this webinar. And first of all, before giving the floor to Isaac Namboyao for a statement, I wanted to mention that we are very grateful that there have been more questions and more interesting, very exciting questions have been raised. We will be short of time to answer them in detail now, but we will provide written answers very soon on the website of this meeting, which is the Global Forum for Remittances, Investment and Development. And the website is, as you can guess, for the acronym www.gfrid.org. And I hope you will see it also on the chat, or you will understand it from the announcement of this webinar. I'd like now to give the floor to Isaac and then to conclude on this webinar. Please, Isaac, la parole à vous.
Merci, Hans, de me
Thank you very
redonner la
much, Hans, for giving me. It really was my pleasure to listen to Veronica, to Ersun from Eurogiro, and others, because, you know, I think it's very important to remember the very historic role of postal operators. Postal operators are that social bond between communities and the government. So Veronica said we have to know each other. We have to know our partners well. And sometimes money transfer operators have focused too much on business fit. And so in terms of marketing or the discussion with stakeholders from the social dimension. So for postal operators, money transfer has become a channel, but let's not forget the overarching purpose: to serve our citizens. Sometimes, you know, they have domestic needs. There's a large needs are domestic. If I'm a member of the diaspora, I send money back to my community for their own domestic purposes, for payment purposes, and sometimes domestic transactions to buy food, to buy health products, go to the pharmacy, pay your water or power bill, buying school supplies because the school year is about to begin. We need to be able to do that, and the role of the post office can be to adjust the marketing message of money transfer operation. The communication has been about, well, we'll pay you a commission of so much, we're going to make life easier for our citizens, and no social dimension. And but using that in order to facilitate domestic payments, as I mentioned, pharmacy, health, power, water bill, buying food, and so on. That is the way the marketing message has to adjusted, and I think everyone stands to gain. So the Universal Postal Union, after the Abidjan Congress, gave clear guidelines. Global postal operators need to go digital, offer digital services, and move towards e-commerce. And money transfer can be an e-commerce solution, making it possible to receive money for plant protection products, making it easier to engage in revenue generating activities. So thank you very much. I see that our time is up, so I'll hand back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. I think, again, very right statements, very valuable. And we need actually many more of these meetings to go in more detail and more depth with more participants. Thank you. I think would like to really express my gratitude to all the panel members for their very useful, very well prepared presentations and exchange of views. I would also like to thank the participants, the audience, in listening and spending their time on this webinar. And I would like to mention again, you raised questions and I see still questions coming in. It's very good. It really emphasizes we need to go to an more interactive and more intensive way of working together. The phrase raised by Veronica, know your partner, is actually very valid for this conversation, for this dialogue. We need to know each other and to elaborate much more in detail on where and how we go there. Thank you for this. Thank you very much for this. I wanted to say that we already heard 8 December is a meeting of UPU on postal financial services in the future, and maybe also partly or fully answering some of the questions, but we go forward, we continue with exchanges, and I would especially like to highlight that in addition to these digital meetings, there will be a very important meeting next year, 14 to 16 June in Nairobi, Kenya. So it is in Africa. It is nearly next door to the Pan-African Postal Union's head office, but it is in the United Nations Center in Nairobi. It is the Global Forum for Remittances, Investment and Development. This forum brings together the main stakeholders in the remittance market. It brings together international organizations, ministries of finance, central banks, money transfer operators, card payment solution providers, payments remittance solution providers, and technology providers. And I would like to highlight and want to be sure that the postal industry, the postal operators are here to talk to them. This is a major practical step in know your partner. They need to know you as postal industry, and you can meet them and you can actually start doing business with them. It's a major opportunity. So please write the dates, save the dates in your agenda, 14 to 16 June next year, Nairobi, Kenya, eGFRID, Global Forum for Remittances, Investment and Development. Thank you very much. Thank you, and I wish you a very nice weekend. And we hope to see really soon online or in Nairobi. Have a nice day and a nice evening, and see you soon again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah.